All right, welcome. This is part one of lesson 5. And today our objectives will be, content objective is we will interpret and compare data sets using data displays. And then our learning objectives, you will be able to explain each part of a histogram. And a histogram is one of the types of data displays that we can use. So let's look at this first histogram. So this right here, this is a histogram. Some of you might look at this and you might think, well, that's a bar graph, but it's not. Let me tell you sort of the difference between a histogram and a bar graph. First of all, a bar graph will often have separations between the bars, whereas a histogram, it's all connected. And a bar graph also typically only shows us a bar for a category, like maybe colors, blue, red, green. A histogram, we're showing categories, but the categories are numeric in nature. In fact, they show some sort of a range. Like notice here, this category is test scores that are between 60 to 69% or 70 to 79. So these are categories of quantity. Okay, so that's what a histogram shows us. So let's answer some questions about this histogram. It says, look at the histogram of scores on a math test. Which axis indicates the frequency? Well, shows us there along the side, so it's the vertical axis shows the frequency. What does the horizontal axis indicate? The horizontal axis shows us the test scores. Okay, so we have test scores. So this is all about how to read these. Then C asks us, how is the horizontal axis organized? It is organized in groups of, well, if we look at these, each of these groups, notice we go from 60 to 69, 70, 79, 80, 89. So it's in groups of essentially 10, okay? Right, 10 points. 60 to 69 is 10 points, 70, 79 is 10 points. Now let's actually interpret some of this data. How many had scores in the interval 60 to 69? Well, if I look at that bar, it goes up to about 3. So it looks like 3 students. 70 to 79. Up here, we go across, looks like 9. Because again, these go up by 2s, 2, 4. So everything in between, you know, we've got like 1, 3, 5, 7. How many scores between 80 and 89? Looks like we're right at 12. Between 90 and 99, it looks like there were, let's see, we were right about here. Looks like we're about 7 students. Okay, it's about 7 students. All right, great. Now let's try to create one of our own. Let's create a histogram. So here's a list of scores from a golf tournament. So here are all the golf scores that we have. They're in no particular order. It wants us to create a frequency table. Well, let's see. The data values range from blank to blank. So what's the smallest value? As I scan through my data, I see 68, 69. So it looks like 68 is my smallest value. All the way up to, let's see, I've got 78. Is there anything larger than 78? There is not. So 78 is my largest. So we should use the interval width of what? Like, what would be a good interval width? Well, if I look at these, if I'm going all the way from 68 to 78, and if you notice down here, I want to have several categories. We're going to go up by 3s, okay? And I'm going to start with the interval 68. So then that means my first interval, if I'm going up by 3, is going to be 68 to 70, and then 71 to 73, 74, 76, 77 to 79. All right, let's look. How many values do I have for each? So how many values do I have between 68 to 70? Well, let's see. I've got 1, right? And 2, and 3, and that's it. So I've got 3 values. how many between 71 to 73 if I go through and count? Should have 4. Between 74 and 76, I believe there are 7 values. 77 through 79, there are 2. Let's make sure these do add up, though. 3 and 7 is 10, so we've got 16. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So it looks like we've got everything. Okay. So now let's talk about our frequencies. How many there are and how often this happens. Notice we've got 3, 4, 7, 2. So it looks like here I can probably go up by ones. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 7. Yeah, so I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And our first frequency is that 68 to 70 group, and that went all the way up to 3. So I'll make a little bar. And then I want to label that bar. I'm going to turn it sideways so I can fit it in there. 68 to 70. It's hard to write this small. The next group went up to 4. Right? Next group went up all the way up to 7. And then the last group was at 2. Okay, and then again I can label these. This group is 71 to 73, 74 to 76, 77 to 79. And it's a little bit of an art to get used to figuring out like what types of intervals you should use. So that's why you really do have to look closely at your data and sort of see the spread and how far it's going. This one, notice it had a spread of basically 10 points. So it worked really well to split it up into, widths of 3, essentially, in order to do that, okay? Check to make sure that the sum of the frequencies are, again, 16. So we want to make sure that they all add up, and they did, okay? And so that's the beginning usage of a histogram.